Two events prompted me to share with you the concept of the envelope of function. One was a question from my client: how do I choose what to do with patients, with students? How do I choose? Do I repeat the same exercises with everybody, or how do I choose? Second was an event where my client was bicycling in New York City and was hit. He's flown over the bar, the bike following him, and he landed and was hit by the pedal of the bike. Traumatic, big event, and phenomenal response of his nervous system, his entire muscular system, skeletal system, you name it, all systems worked beautifully. All he had was he needed stitches on the side of his head, no concussion, no fractures, no injury, no trouble at all. Just an example of perfect, excellent health and excellent response to traumatic event. We both celebrated all these Feldenkrais lessons where we do judo rolls, where we did lessons that prepare him for that moment. I've learned about the zone of homeostasis from Dr. Scott Forsyth Dye, who is an orthopedist from San Francisco, and he used that model in context of health of patellofemoral joint, meaning front of the knee. However, this is a wonderful blueprint for all sorts of troubles, all sorts of musculoskeletal injuries and beyond. So here's my homemade graph. And on the graph, we see two lines. The vertical line that represent intensity of a shock or load, basically an intensity of a stressor. On the horizontal line, we have the frequency, how many times the stressor is applied. So intensity and frequency. The red line represents structural failure, meaning basically something breaking. And it could be herniating of disc, it could be rupturing of labrum in your shoulder or hip, it could be rotator cuff trouble injuries, it could be breaking bones, you name it, structural failure. Then we have the zone of overuse, zone of homeostasis, and the zone of disuse or underuse. Intensity of shock, it could be one-timer, like the fall of my client, and he actually did beautifully. Only skin sustained a structural failure. He needed some stitches to heal the wound. His bones, his joints did beautifully. So if I fall off the 3rd floor scaffolding or 4th floor scaffolding, will be one-timer, frequency of one time, huge impacts, huge stress on my system that can create a break in any of those tissues. Then underneath that, we have the zone of overuse, zone that we visit when we exercise, when we load our body, where we want our bones to get stronger. We need to pound and walk. We don't want to walk too much because it could, depending on the state of your bone, it could be accumulation of, let's say, 50%, and 1 time, 2 times, 10 times, no problem, 10,000 steps, no problem. Then we go to some zone that it becomes straining and overusing. And if I keep walking, at certain point, I will achieve that breaking point through accumulation of frequency. Then there is a zone of homeostasis. Basically, this is where we stay healthy. This is optimal. This is our comfort zone. This is where we function at our best. And we have the zone of underuse or disuse, like let's say you're in bed rest and you're not loading your body sufficiently. This can lead to atrophy, also to breaking of the tissues through atrophy. Now, this is an easy model when you think of a static one-time moment, but in truth, this zone of homeostasis is fluctuating, is moving. So let's say normally walking, maybe it's 40% of shock or 30% of shock, something moderate to mild. But in certain situations, when you're already struggling, when the joint is not healthy or bone is not healthy, even your normal walking, this whole structural line and overuse line can lower down to the point where your activities of daily life, things that you naturally, normally used to do without any problem, can become problematic. And that's why we want to learn how to become aware where we are at in terms of our inner state at any particular moment from day to day, because this will fluctuate. Sometimes even bed rest can be zone of overuse and potential structural failure. That's why in some situation where there is really life and death situations, doctors will give medication in order to lower the activity of our system even below bed rest, induce coma so the system can recuperate if there is a swelling in the brain or some really, really life-threatening conditions. Even normal bed rest is too much, and therefore we need to lower it to basically state of vegetation for our system to go back and grow and strengthen. So this is something that fluctuates. With training, our zone of homeostasis is capable of taking more and more shocks. Like, for example, my client who was able to fall and roll and get even hit by the pedal, and practically just his skin suffered a little bit and he's perfectly fine. The same day he was up and around. So his zone of homeostasis is much higher than somebody who's less fit, less capable to take shocks. So the zone of homeostasis and zone of structural failure and overuse is something that's dynamic. It changes, and it changes not only in the long-term way, like from year to year as we aging, but it also can fluctuate from day to day, from even moment to moment. And many things impact that: our fitness level, our nutrition, our hydration, our stress levels, psychological and emotional stresses, even satisfaction of work and relationships that we have with other people can impact how our bones, tendons, muscles, our body, how resilient and how healthy it is. In training, there is a good idea to journal, to keep a journal when you write the loads that you've done, how you responded, how you felt. So journaling can help us not to overdo, not to use, like you can reflect how much of load you had last week, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. So you don't decide one day out of the blue because you're feeling hot today to suddenly increase the loads in the gym by 30, 40, 80%, because you could potentially risk the structural failure. So instead, you want to increase in the mild, gradual way. But since our zone of homeostasis is so dynamic and it changes, it's not enough to just add a little bit on top of what you did yesterday or last week. Sometimes you need to actually do less than you did last week or yesterday. You need to learn how to respond to the signals that come from inside your body, your pain, your level of discomfort, your level of irritation, mental fatigue, physical fatigue, your nutrition level, how much you slept, hydration, your current life circumstances will impact where your homeostasis is at the moment. The Feldenkrais method is a wonderful tool because the majority of it is studying, paying attention to these internal signals that come from your body, paying attention to subtleties of how you feel, how secure, how safe you feel at the moment, Are you safe right now? Are you contracted in some places in your body? Are you able to discern the sensory input that's coming from your body? So sensory perception first. Second is interpretation. Can you interpret the signals? Or you just disregard, or this is beyond your level of awareness, that there is some signal that's coming from your body, some sort of discomfort or tension or something, signal from your body, but you're not able to register, or you're not able to interpret that. Or perhaps you interpret it correctly, but you still disregard it because you have this tournament coming. So you need to ask for steroid shot from the doctor in order to push through. And we need to be okay with that too, that sometimes we make decisions to disregard the signs from our body and to push through. Sometimes it's heroic and it's wonderful and brings success, but sometimes it breaks us. And as long as we take personal responsibility, that's fine. But we don't want our compulsion and habits to force us to do something. We want to come to harmony with our internal feelings, sensations, and recognize them and act appropriately. The Feldenkrais method is a wonderful method of training attention and awareness, building our health and building our progress. I hope you can use this concept of zone of homeostasis and adhere to your charting for smooth sailing. Cheers.